What happens when a CEO eats his own catering and realizes his team's being crushed under someone else's weight? Brayden Ross sat in his office staring at an untouched lunch tray: chicken breast, roasted carrots, wild rice, and a cookie that looked dry enough to crack tile. It had arrived cold, tasted worse, and came from one of his own catering units. He sighed and pushed it aside. He didn't build this business. His father had. But after inheriting it 5 years ago, Brayden had doubled its size, 15 locations now spread across 3 states. Catering for offices, weddings, private events. He'd kept the bones of the company, but trusted too many reports from middle management. He hadn't stepped foot in one of the kitchens in over a year. Yesterday, he got an anonymous letter. Handwritten. Sloppy. It said, "You should see what's happening at the 10th Street branch. Nobody's listening to the staff. People are quitting, and customers are starting to notice." He almost tossed it, but something about it stuck with him. Maybe the handwriting, maybe the fact that it didn't ask for anything. It just wanted him to look. 10th Street was one of their older kitchens, mostly used for downtown events. He'd never met the team there. And with over 200 employees across 15 branches, no one would recognize him, especially not with a clean shave, a baseball cap, and a name tag that read Ben. He drove himself. Parked 3 blocks away. Wore jeans, a blank hoodie, and a delivery bag slung over his shoulder. The plan was simple: pose as a new trainee for delivery and prep. His assistant had already called ahead a week ago under a fake alias, saying Ben was transferring from a different city unit. Inside, the smell of stale oil hit first. The place wasn't dirty, but it wasn't sharp either. Counters had streaks. The lighting flickered. A woman in her mid-30s stood behind a prep table, scooping tuna salad into tiny plastic cups at lightning speed. "You Ben?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah," Brayden said. "You're late." He checked the time. He was 10 minutes early. She finally looked up. "Whatever. I'm Letitia. I'm on prep. Don't ask me questions, ask Kyle." Brayden turned to see a man barking orders near the ovens. "Kyle," she added, "is the manager. Don't get in his way." Kyle was in his early 40s, tall, buzz-cut, shoulders like a linebacker. His voice cut through the room like a blade. "Where's the sauce for the chicken skewers? No one labeled the damn pans again." Brayden walked over. "I'm Ben. New transfer." Kyle gave him a once-over. "Christ. Another one? All right. Grab those trays, follow Jen out on delivery. You'll ride along today." Brayden nodded, grabbed 2 trays of boxed meals, and followed a red-haired woman in her 20s out the back door. They loaded up the van in silence. She looked tired. Eyes sunken, fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the trays. "You all right?" Brayden asked. Jen forced a smile. "Yeah, just 2 doubles back to back. I'll be fine." He paused. "Doubles?" She glanced at him. "Yeah, I've done, 24 hours across 2 days. But hey, Kyle says we're lucky to have hours, so." Brayden frowned. "That normal? Here?" "Yeah. He's been short-staffed for months. And instead of hiring, he just schedules us more. Says it's cheaper." Brayden kept quiet. But inside, something stirred. The delivery was to a law office 3 blocks away. They set up the trays: mini sandwiches, pasta salad, those same dry cookies, and walked back to the van. "Do you ever eat the food?" he asked. Jen laughed. "I used to, until I saw how long it sits before it gets packed. If it's a slow day, some stuff's been out since morning." Back at the kitchen, Brayden volunteered to help on prep. Letitia handed him a knife and a tray of bell peppers. "Cut those thin. No chunks. Kyle hates chunks." He worked beside her in silence until she broke it. "You from the Westbrook branch?" "Yeah," he lied. She nodded. "They dump all the new guys here. We're the only ones that still take walk-ins." Brayden kept cutting. "Why's that?" "Because Kyle doesn't say no to anything. Overbooks us every week. We had to do 2 weddings and a baby shower last Saturday with 5 people." He blinked. 5? "Yup. I did all the deviled eggs and salad trays myself. My hands still hurt." He wanted to ask more, but Kyle's voice boomed again. Letitia, you labeled the soup? She flinched. I told Angie to do it. Well, she didn't. Soup's cold now. Brayden turned to see Angie, a shy girl no older than 19, freeze as Kyle stormed toward her. I told you to label the damn soup. This is the third time this week. Angie's lip trembled. I thought Kyle raised his hand as if to slam the counter. You thought wrong. I'm not gonna babysit you. Brayden stepped forward instinctively. Hey, she made a mistake. No need to yell. Kyle turned, eyes narrowing. You got a problem, Ben? Brayden stared him down. Just saying there's better ways to manage people. Kyle scoffed. You've been here 5 minutes. Still long enough to know yelling's not getting you better soup. The room fell silent. Kyle stared at him, then walked off muttering, Another smartass. Letitia leaned in. You shouldn't have done that. Why? Because Kyle's tight with the district manager. He gets away with anything. Brayden said nothing, but his mind was racing. By 6, Jen was still there. So was Angie. So was Letitia. None of them had taken a break. You guys eat yet? Brayden asked. Lunch? That was at 10 this morning, Letitia said. He checked the wall schedule. Jen's name was on it 5 days straight, double shifts. Angie too. Letitia was covering prep, delivery, and sometimes clean up. He sat in the corner and opened one of the extra meals: chicken breast, carrots, rice. He took a bite. Cold. Bland. Overcooked. He looked up at Jen, who was wiping down trays. You eat this every day? She shrugged. Only if there's leftovers. But even then, not unless I'm starving. He set the tray down. He had seen enough. Tomorrow, he'd be back. Not as Ben. As Brayden Ross, CEO and owner of every kitchen under that roof. And this time, Kyle wouldn't be yelling at anyone. By 7:30 the next morning, Brayden stood in front of the 10th Street branch in a charcoal overcoat and buttoned down, a thin folder tucked under his arm. No ball cap, no hoodie. He waited until a delivery van pulled in and the staff began unloading trays before stepping inside. The same hallway, the same flickering light. But this time, no one met him at the door. He found Kyle near the back, speaking with a supplier about produce invoices. Kyle glanced up, and for a moment, there was no recognition. Then something shifted. You're Brayden Ross? Brayden didn't answer. He just walked past him, heading straight for the small office off the kitchen. The door was open, a whiteboard filled with schedules and checklists behind a cluttered desk. Kyle followed, voice tight. I had no idea you were coming in. We weren't told. That was the point. Brayden sat, placed the folder on the desk, and opened it. Inside were labor logs, customer complaints, and internal reports from the past 6 months. He didn't look up. How many people are scheduled to work more than 40 hours this week? Kyle hesitated. We've had some staffing challenges. A few people offered to answer the question, Kyle. Kyle scratched the back of his neck. 5. Maybe 6. Brayden flipped a page. It's 9. 3 of them are clocking over 50 hours consistently. One of them had a 14-hour shift 2 days ago. That's not a challenge. That's policy. Kyle shifted his weight. It's a tough season. Events pile up. You've turned understaffing into a strategy. Brayden closed the folder and finally looked at him. From now on, you don't talk. You listen. Kyle's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I spent yesterday on the floor. I saw staff skipping meals, deliveries going out late, and food being prepped with ingredients that had been sitting out for hours. I watched employees push through exhaustion while you barked orders from a corner. If this is how you run things when you think no one's watching, I don't need to ask how long it's been this way. Kyle opened his mouth, but Brayden cut him off. You'll step back from this location effective immediately. We're transferring oversight to someone else until we determine next steps. Kyle's face dropped. I built this kitchen from the ground up. No. You drained it from the inside out. Brayden stood. You've got 10 minutes to gather your things. Leave the keys with Letitia. Kyle didn't move at first. Then he turned and walked out slower than he needed to. The door swung shut behind him. Brayden exhaled once, then walked back into the kitchen. Letitia was washing down a slicer. She glanced over, eyes locking on his pressed shirt and polished shoes. Her hands stilled. "You're the owner." He nodded. "I guess last night. You stood up to him." She dried her hands on a towel. "He's been like that since the pandemic. Said we were lucky to have jobs. I stopped arguing after he cut my hours for attitude." "You're the longest tenured employee here?" "6 years. I've worked every station." "Then you know what this kitchen needs." She raised an eyebrow. "You asking me to run it?" "I'm asking you to stabilize it. We'll bring in a temporary manager next week. Until then, I want you to help split shifts, adjust workloads, and make sure nobody's here more than they need to be. I'll be back daily to support you." Letitia hesitated. "I never wanted to manage anyone." "I'm not asking you to manage. I'm asking you to protect the people who haven't had anyone in their corner. Just for a week." She looked around the room. Angie was setting up the prep table, her shoulders hunched. Jen was loading a van with trays alone again. Letitia nodded. "All right, but I'm not cleaning up Kyle's mess alone." "You won't." Brayden moved to the prep station where Angie was slicing cucumbers without looking up. He took a second knife, grabbed a cutting board, and joined her. "You're not in trouble," he said. She paused. "I figured. Everyone's acting weird. I'm the owner. I was here yesterday under a different name. I saw what happened. It wasn't right." Angie looked down, her voice barely above the hum of the fridge. "I almost quit last week. I called my mom and told her I couldn't do it anymore." "What made you stay?" "I need to finish school. This job has flexible hours. Or it used to." Brayden nodded. "We'll get it back to what it was. But I need you to hang in with me a little longer." She gave a small nod. By noon, Brayden had pulled Jen aside as she returned from her second delivery. "I owe you an apology," he said. "For what?" "For letting people like Kyle operate under my name." Jen leaned against the van, wiping her hands on her jeans. "I figured you were corporate. That suit screams it. I'm more hands-on than I look. Or I'm supposed to be." She narrowed her eyes. "You gonna fix this place? For real? Starting now. You're taking the rest of the day off. Full pay. You've worked more than anyone this week." I mean if I leave, Letitia's got it. And I'll handle deliveries if we need to. Go get some rest." Jen stared at him for a few seconds before nodding slowly. As she walked off, Brayden turned to Letitia, who was already reorganizing the whiteboard schedule with a red marker. He stepped over. "Tomorrow, we bring in 3 floaters from other branches. They'll help cover until we hire more permanent staff." Letitia didn't look up. "That'll help. But we're still short on prep hands. I'll bring in someone from headquarters. And I'll be here myself through the weekend." She stopped writing. "You're not just visiting? I let this go too long. I'm not stepping out again until I know it's right." Letitia gave a short nod and kept working. Brayden stepped outside for a breath. The sun had risen higher, casting long shadows across the back lot. The catering van still had smudges on the rear windows, and the pavement near the loading area was stained from years of runoff. None of it changed in a day. But the tone inside had shifted. No raised voices. No silent suffering. He walked around to the front again and held the door open as Angie carried 2 trays out. She gave a quiet thanks and kept moving. Inside, Letitia was assigning tasks, her voice calm but firm. The prep table was cleaner. The air smelled of fresh herbs instead of reheated starch. Brayden picked up a mop and started on the back tile. He didn't say anything. Just worked. The way they had. For too long. This wasn't cleanup. This was accountability. And it had barely begun. Brayden arrived just after 6 the next morning, dressed down in a gray pullover and worn boots. The lot behind the 10th Street kitchen was still quiet, save for one delivery van idling near the back. The sky was still dim and the windows glowed a soft amber from inside. Letitia was already there, standing over a clipboard on the prep counter, quietly assigning trays for the morning runs. Her eyes flicked up as Brayden entered, but she didn't pause her work. Angie called in. Said her sister's sick and she has to watch her niece. Brayden hung his coat by the door. "We'll manage. Who's covering her station?" I pushed some of her prep to myself and split the rest between Javi and Mari. "Not ideal, but doable if we don't get hit with walk-ins." The air smelled slightly fresher. Someone must have scrubbed the back sinks, but there was still a tension clinging to the room like steam off the stovetops. Not because of Kyle. Because the system he left behind hadn't disappeared with him. Brayden moved behind the prep table and began peeling carrots without being asked. Letitia didn't comment on it, just slid a tray of washed produce closer. At 7, Jen walked in, denim jacket slung over her shoulder, hair pulled up into a loose twist. She looked better rested, but her gait was still stiff. "You sure you're good to be here?" Brayden asked without looking up. "I slept. Didn't think I'd want to come back so soon, but I do. Just don't ask me to lift anything heavier than a coffee pot until after 9. "Fair enough. You're on light deliveries today. 2 offices, 1 school. Letitia's got the route printed." Jen took the paper, scanned it, then leaned against the counter. "This place feels different already. Not better yet, just quieter." Letitia glanced at her. "That's because no one's being called an idiot before sunrise." Jen snorted. "I'll take it," she said, heading for the loading area. By 9, the kitchen was in full motion. Trays were being packed, coolers zipped shut, carts rolled toward the back van. Brayden stayed on prep, rotating between slicing, bagging, and labeling. No one treated him like a guest anymore, and he didn't act like one. Mid-morning, a courier dropped off a stack of invoices from the downtown event office. Letitia sorted through them with a red pen, highlighting inconsistencies in order sizes and noting missing items. She held one up. "This says we served salmon skewers on Friday," she said to Brayden. "We didn't have salmon in stock that day." Brayden looked over her shoulder. "That's the wedding at the Ridgemont. I remember the order chicken and vegetarian wraps." She set the sheet down. Kyle must have been fabricating menus to upsell. "It's not just bad management, it's theft." Brayden took the invoice and slid it into a separate folder. "Keep tagging anything that doesn't match actual orders." "Want me to call the event clients too?" "Not yet. I'll handle that from headquarters." "I don't want you chasing ghosts while trying to rebuild a crew." Letitia nodded once, then returned to the stack. At 11, Javi came in from the back, rubbing his shoulder with his apron still on. Cooler motors rattling again. "Sounds worse than last week." Brayden stood, dusting off his hands. "It's the walk-in?" "Yeah. Last time it was the belt. Might be worse now." Brayden followed him into the back storage room. The cooler hummed with an uneven rhythm, each cycle ending in a sharp knock, like metal slapping metal. He squatted beside the motor housing and listened. "Can you work around it for today?" "Yeah, but if it dies mid-shift, we'll lose everything inside." Brayden stood and checked the inventory. Full trays of pasta salad, prepped proteins, dairy, all at risk. "Get Letitia to reshuffle some of the perishables. I'll get a tech out this afternoon." Javi nodded and moved off. Brayden pulled out his phone and called his facilities lead at headquarters. "I need a walk-in cooler tech at 10th Street today. No delays. It's urgent." The tech confirmed a 2 p.m. arrival. Brayden hung up and returned to the kitchen where Jen was sanitizing carts between runs. "Cooler's on its last leg," he said. She didn't look up, surprised it lasted this long. He watched her for a moment. "You ever think about moving into operations?" She paused, then straightened. "Why? You know the delivery routes better than anyone. You've seen what's wrong and you think 2 steps ahead. I'm not sure I'm built for that. You don't have to decide now. But if you ever want to train into something steadier, I'll back you." Jen gave a small nod. "I'll think about it." Just after noon, the temporary manager arrived. A woman in her early 50s named Rona pulled from a more stable branch across town. She entered quietly, clipboard already in hand, and introduced herself to Letitia. "I'm not here to micromanage," she said. "I'm just here to get systems back in place and give you space to do the work." Letitia studied her for a moment, then passed her the red-marked schedule. "Then we're already ahead of most people they send." Brayden met Rona briefly at the side office. "I need you to observe for the next 2 days. Don't overhaul anything yet. Just see where the friction is." Rona nodded. "Understood." At 2, the cooler repair tech arrived and confirmed the motor would need replacing. Brayden approved the cost immediately. By 3, Angie had arrived to cover the last leg of prep. She looked drained but determined. Letitia handed her a short list. We only need you for 2 hours. Then go home. Angie didn't argue. She got to work. Brayden caught Letitia as she was logging inventory near the back. You're running on fumes. I'm fine. You're not. You've been holding this place together since Kyle left. I want you out by 5 today. I still have to balance tomorrow's ingredient order. Rona can help you finish it. She knows the suppliers. Letitia hesitated. He waited. Finally, she nodded. Only if you're here to cover the evening walk-ins. I'm not going anywhere. She handed him the clipboard and walked off, shoulders just slightly looser than they'd been all day. By 5:30, the last delivery left. The kitchen had quieted again, but this time it wasn't exhaustion. It was the kind of silence that follows a long breath out. Brayden stayed to clean, watching as the team slowly trickled out. Javi left with a wave. Mari tucked her apron into a cubby and disappeared without a word. Angie was last, her backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in. As she passed Brayden, she stopped. I didn't think someone like you would actually show up. I didn't think I needed to. That was the mistake. She nodded once, then left. Brayden stood alone in the middle of the kitchen. The cooler hummed with its temporary patch. The counters were wiped, the floors swept. No yelling. No burnout simmering under every movement. Not fixed. Not yet. But no longer ignored. He turned off the lights and locked the door behind him. 3 weeks later, the 10th Street kitchen had changed, but only in ways that could be earned, not granted. The first things Brayden did were structural. He authorized a dedicated hiring push, with a recruiter from headquarters calling through backlogged applications and hosting walk-ins on site. They weren't flooded with candidates, but 3 solid part-timers joined within the first week. One was a culinary school dropout who quickly slotted into prep, the second was a former barista looking for steadier hours, and the third a soft-spoken single father took weekend delivery shifts without complaint. Brayden didn't just sign off on hires. He stayed on site, rotating between prep, loading, and even late-day cleanups. He wasn't trying to prove a point. He was building a rhythm with the team, one that hadn't existed before. Letitia, whose voice had always carried quiet authority, began delegating with more confidence. She didn't hover. She didn't apologize when she asked for support. And with Rona now fully integrated as interim manager, Letitia was free to focus on logistics and training whenever needed. On a Tuesday morning, Brayden arrived to find Jen reviewing a delivery map with one of the new hires, explaining how certain elevators in the financial district couldn't handle full carts, and which offices refused early drop-offs. She didn't notice Brayden until she turned to grab an insulated bag. "You always come in before 8 now?" she asked, pulling her hair into a low knot. "I figured if I'm asking people to be here by 7, I shouldn't be showing up after them." She gave a quiet nod and slid the delivery sheet into her clipboard. "We're still short on hands for Friday. That's a triple event day. I've asked headquarters to pull 2 floaters. If they don't confirm today, I'll cover one of the routes myself." Jen raised an eyebrow. "You still remember how to drive one of our vans?" "I remember how to stall one on a hill, if that counts." As she chuckled and turned toward the loading area, Rona stepped in from the office, holding a purchase order. "We've got a problem with the chafing fuel shipment," she said, handing the paper to Brayden. "They shorted us by half a case. That means we'll run out by the second event on Saturday." He scanned the sheet. "I'll call the supplier myself. If they can't make good by tomorrow, I'll buy it retail and eat the cost." Rona didn't argue. She stepped back to finalize the inventory for next week. It wasn't smooth sailing. Nothing ever really was. The cooler motor had failed completely a few days earlier, just as the replacement part arrived. They lost 2 trays of marinated vegetables and a full batch of shrimp skewers. Letitia had caught it early enough to prevent worse, but the scramble to remake the items had left everyone stretched thin that afternoon. Still, no one yelled. No one accused. They solved it, cleaned up, and kept moving. Late Thursday, as the kitchen wound down, Brayden found Angie restocking the dry goods shelf. She was humming faintly to herself, something off-key and restless. "You ever get a weekend off?" he asked, leaning near the doorway. She paused, then shook her head. "Not in the last year." "You want this one?" She glanced over. "Are you serious? You've covered every closing shift this week. You've earned a break." Her voice dropped. "My niece's birthday is Sunday. I didn't think I'd make it." "You will now." She nodded once, almost too quickly, and went back to stacking cans. That night, after the last of the staff had clocked out, Brayden sat with Letitia and Rona in the back office. The whiteboard behind them was still cluttered with shift blocks, but the red marks that used to flag double shifts were gone. Rona tapped a pen against the desk. "We've got coverage for the weekend. If no one calls out, we'll be able to run all 3 events with time for cleanup." Brayden leaned back in his chair. "You've been solid here. I know you were only temporary, but if you're open to staying, I'd like to make it permanent." Rona pursed her lips. "I didn't expect to like this kitchen, but your staff cares. That's rare. You think you could build with them long-term?" "I could." Brayden turned to Letitia. "Would you stay on as lead? Not just prep. Oversee training, scheduling, and supplies." Letitia didn't hesitate. "If Rona's staying, I will." He nodded. "Then we'll make it official tomorrow." The next morning, Brayden called a short team meeting before the first deliveries. He stood near the prep table while the staff gathered around, still holding knives, order slips, or coffee mugs. "I owe all of you more than thanks," he said. "I owe you the truth. I should have been paying attention before things hit a wall here. That's on me." No one interrupted. A few glanced at one another, but most just waited. "I went undercover 3 weeks ago because I didn't trust the reports I was getting. I needed to see things for myself, and what I saw told me everything I'd been missing." He looked at Jen, who leaned against the steel sink, arms folded. "I saw people overworked and undersupported. I saw breakdowns in process, in communication, in basic respect. But I also saw people who kept showing up, who held this place together when they had every reason not to." He turned to Letitia, who stood with her arms at her sides, watching him without blinking. "This kitchen doesn't run because of policy. It runs because of the people inside it. That means from now on, decisions won't be made from a distance. They'll be made with input from the floor." A few heads nodded. Angie shifted her weight, then glanced up. "We're installing a team feedback system that reports directly to me, anonymous or not. Scheduling will be reviewed weekly by both your lead and your manager. Any overtime has to be approved, and I'll personally review it every Monday morning." He glanced around the room. "You deserve dignity in your work. That's not a bonus. That's the baseline." He stepped aside, and Rona moved forward. "Starting next week, we'll have a rotating schedule where every employee gets 2 consecutive days off. It'll mean tighter planning, but we'll make it work. No one should be living here." That drew a small laugh from someone near the back. Brayden waited until the room quieted again. "One more thing," he said. "I've decided to create a leadership development fund across all branches. Anyone interested in cross-training or moving into operations can apply for mentorship and paid training. That includes delivery drivers and part-time staff." Jen's eyes flicked up. He didn't say anything more, just met her gaze for a second, then turned back to the group. "This place is going to change. Not because we're trying to look good, but because it's the right thing to do." He nodded once. "Back to it." The team broke off, returning to trays and checklists and prep stations. Brayden didn't linger. He grabbed a pair of gloves and joined Javi at the cold table, slicing cucumbers for the lunch trays. Outside, the vans rumbled to life. Orders were loaded, routes finalized. Inside, no one was working scared. No one was guessing how long they could hold on. Progress stayed slow, but it stayed steady. And for the first time in a long time, the 10th Street kitchen wasn't just surviving. It was becoming something worth building on.